Rings of Power, Episode 8, The Leaks were true, How bad is Sauron? It's all crap. It really is a waste of time, people trying to hope for anything to do with the reality of Tolkien's Legendarium. I could end the video there. However, not going to do that. I'm going to go into a bit of depth on some stuff. Now, first of all, something I discovered since the last episode is that apparently the setting for the Rings of Power is roughly about 1,000 years into the Second Age. Now, according to the information that the Rings of Power writers have, i.e. the appendices of The Lord of the Rings. Appendix B, Tale of the Years. Year 1, Foundation of the Grey Havens and of Lindon. Year 32, the Edain reach Numenor and they become the Dunedain. Year 40, many of the dwarves from the Ered Luin go to Moria. So they go from the ruins of Belagost and Nogrod and the mountains having been destroyed by the tearing down of Beleriand, and they go to swell the numbers in Khazad-dûm. Year 442, the death of Elros Tar Miniatur. So Tar Miniatur, maybe, however you pronounce it. So the death of Elrond's brother, the first king of the Dunedain. Year 500, Sauron begins to stir again in Middle-earth. Year 548, birth in Numenor of Silmarillion. Year 600, the first ships of the Númenóreans appear off the coasts. 750, Eregion founded by the Noldor. Year 1000, Sauron, alarmed by the growing power of the Númenóreans, chooses Mordor as a land to make into a stronghold. He begins the building of Barad-dûr. Now, there's elements of that which you could say, okay, yeah, they're fitting within what they've got. I mean, the ships, they're saying, if we saw at the end of the last episode, they're saying that there's an abandoned outpost, an abandoned place that the Númenóreans had called Pelargir, which, as we know from, if you've read the Lord of the Rings and other background materials, you'll know Pelargir is effectively one of the hopeful, the faithful's bases of power within Middle-earth. Whereas Umbar is for the Kingsmen, and that's why you end up with Umbar being the Corsairs and Pelargir still being a faithful Gondorian stronghold. So you could maybe say, well, okay, they've got that in 600. Eregion founded by the Noldor 750. Okay, well, if we're in 1000, Eregion already exists. Celebrimbor's set it all up. Go from there. Okay, fair enough. Sauron begins to stir. Okay, we're starting to struggle a bit now. There's no real stirring going on that we're aware of early on, unless we're talking about this whole thing with Adar and him saying how Sauron wanted to do stuff to the orcs who he cares about, and therefore he's going to try and stop him. But we don't hear about Sauron being stopped at any point. And then Sauron creates Mordor. Can anyone remember who it was that created Mordor? Not Sauron. This was Adar. Adar, who we see in this episode, Sauron refers to Adar as his enemy. Now, all of this is up to the year 1000. No rings. The rings do not start happening until 500 years later. It's very clear. It's all here. 500 years later. And yet they've started it. So that's the first thing. Second thing. Getting my next book to refer to. the complete guide to Middle Earth, and at the back it's got the various genealogies. Now, Tar-Miniatur Elrond, he is the first king of Numenor, and he dies in 442. He lives about 500. Well, no, he does live 500 years, and you're in the 400s. I'm pretty sure for all of his descendants, at least for the first kind of 5 or 6 generations. Tar-Vardamir, well, it says Vardamir here. He doesn't become king. He's not crowned because he feels he's too old. So he hands over to his son Tar-Amendil, and it sets the theme in place for many generations to come that the king of the Dunedain will effectively retire whilst their heir is still young, and therefore they're able to kind of hand over willingly rather than have it taken away from them either by force or by death. So we have Tar-Amendil, who's the second crowned king, the grandson of Elros, then Tar-Elendil, and then Tar-Elendil is where we see the Lords of the Adonai, the faithful, being created, because as we heard with the birth of Silmarion, which was, referencing back to the book, that was in 548. So Tar-Elendil has his eldest child in 548 of the Second Age, but it's a girl. Girls can't inherit the kingdom, so she marries someone. It doesn't say within the genealogy here. She has a son called Valandil. He becomes the Lord of the Adonai, and that leads to the faithful, which ends up with us having Elendil, Isildur, and Arion, and so on. But his eldest son becomes Tar-Meneldur, so that's our 4th crowned king, 5th generation. And then Tar-Aldarion, 5th crowned king, 6th generation, dies Second Age, 1075. Given how long they reign at least 200 years. That means that the ruler at the time that the Rings of Power is being created, is being set. We should be on Tar-Aldarion. Tar-Aldarion should be still very healthy in years, although obviously getting on a bit. And there's not really a huge amount of interaction between the Númenóreans and the elves. There's a little bit of travelling around, but one of the things that we know about the Númenóreans is they travelled a lot around Middle-earth. Middle-earth couldn't give a stuff about with a lot of this, hence the whole thing of Pharazôn saying, oh, we're going to create lots of ways for new monies to come into Númenor and so on from there sending the army over to Middle-earth. So that's where we should be with Númenor at the time that it's set. We are, let's see if I count it through, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 generations ahead. 18 stupid generations ahead. Now bear in mind, for example, to get 1, 2, 3, 4, to get 5... let's go for 6. To get 6 generations on from when Tar-Aldarion dies in 1075, that would take us to 2251. So that's nearly 1200 years to take 6 generations through there. So this is just utterly mental the way things are going. So we have the stupidity of the way that the Rings of Power are doing things. So let's try and have a look at what they actually did through this episode. So the first thing we have is the episode starting pointing us to the Gandalf character, who, as you'll see throughout the episode, we see lots of things where they're effectively saying, look, this is Gandalf, isn't it amazing? Like Gandalf, like us, aren't we amazing because we've got Gandalf? And Gandalf, there's a little bit that appears to tell you the geography. It tells you that he has made it to, let's see, the word is Erin Gallen. Now, I had a look in my complete guide to Middle-earth, and there is no such place as Erin Gallen. However, there is Erin Lasgallen, which means the wood of green leaves, also known as Greenwood the Great, which they say, Erin Gallen, Greenwood. Now, okay, we could just say, well, they've got the name a little bit wrong. It's pretty poor research department, but let's have a look at what that actually means. The Atlas of Tolkien's Middle-earth. Okay, so we've got here the Southlands kind of area, because we're assuming, particularly given all that's going on, that the Harfoots would have been around there, and they've sent Gandalf up to the Greenwood. That's a distance of about 400 miles. So if you look at on a good day, someone will be able to travel 20 miles a day and need to rest around that. 400 miles divided by 20, that's 20 days. We're looking at a 20-day gap at best. At best. In theory, it should probably actually be longer than that. So I would suggest we're looking at a month's gap here. Doesn't say anything to suggest that it's passed in that way. On top of that, as we see later, this 400 mile distance has been travelled by the Harfoots, who are half the size of Gandalf. Half the size, therefore, would have to be... they're effectively travelling 800 miles in their kind of size equivalent. And yet they're able to not only gain on him, they actually catch up with him, as we'll see in a little bit. So we have Gandalf. He's all alone. They show a figure hiding from the rain, covering himself over. And he gets the apple out that Nori gave him at the end of the episode, and he's reminded of all the time she's saying, "You're good, you're good." He's constantly being reaffirmed by the things that this nobody character is saying to him. Now, even if this isn't Gandalf, even if this is simply another of the Maiar, effectively a lesser angel. A lesser angel doesn't need to be reminded by someone of the stature of Nori that they are good. That's not the way that it works. It's just... yeah, it's just reaffirming to the audience effectively. Look, we've got this amazing character. No, you've got someone who is utterly meaningless, who is being Mary Sued at every opportunity within this to say, "Isn't she amazing?" with absolutely no reason why we should believe that. So we have this. following Gandalf with his apple in his hand, and I describe them as the weirdos. You've got the three different beings or women in white, the trans-looking one, and the two others, and they find Gandalf, and they declare he's Sauron, and we think, oh, we've got this big reveal. No. Nobody's being fooled by this. You've pointed too much towards this as being Gandalf. Therefore, this guy can't possibly be Sauron. Therefore, it's a pointless reveal. It's like you're saying, here's the mystery box. There's your answer. You don't have to worry about being surprised anymore because there's your answer. No, we know you're going to throw something else in because you've made so many other things very clear about what you're saying about this character. And so that scene ends with them kind of bowing down to him, declaring he's Sauron. They're going to help him to remember who he is. We then switch to Galadriel doing her horse riding again, and good grief, is this a waste of a slow-mo? Why do they need to have a slow-mo of Galadriel? Unless, of course, she's just incompetent on the horse, so therefore they need to have it going slowed down because she had to go slowly anyway, otherwise she might fall off. It's utterly pointless in terms of what it shows. It gives no real depth to what's going on. It's just there for the sake of having a slow-mo. And Galadriel arrives, and Galadriel and Elrond are reunited after what are you doing here? What are you doing here? I've got no idea why Galadriel is saying, what are you doing here? I mean, they've arrived at Eregion, which is part of Gil-galad's realm. Therefore, why is that an issue that Elrond is there? But she says, why are you here? He says, why are you here? Because obviously he thought that she'd gone off to Valinor. And they then have a conversation where I'm guessing that the theory was they were going to be rebuilding the relationship, reaffirming that they are friends and so on and so forth. It was utter guff. The contents of the conversation was the equivalent of, hello. You right? Yeah. I like you. You'd be my friend. Yeah, I'll be your friend. And that was it. There was absolutely nothing being said other than we're friends. And they tried to dress it up. There's this whole silliness about Galadriel saying how she kept on swimming, and then there's a return back to it when Elrond asks, well, what do we do now? She says, keep on swimming. It's just, it's trying to sound fancy. It's trying to sound grand and epic, and it lands like a damp squib. It really does. So then we see about what's going on. The elves. The elves apparently are incredible healers, despite the fact that in a previous episode we've been told they don't actually have healers. They have things that make people feel better, but they don't have medicine, apparently, though obviously if we look at the situation in Lord of the Rings and Frodo's Nazgul stab from the Morgul blade, we know that they have elvish medicine because that is what Aragorn is using. But anyway, we have let's call him for now Halbarad, brought in. He's taken to be looked after. We have a brief bit of looking at him, and then we've gone away, and then all of a sudden he's wandering around Celebrimbor's workshop. Yes, he's doing a bit of a limp and things like that, but given the way that the injury was sold to us, he should have been in bed for days at the bare minimum. But it's like he was in there for 10 minutes. The elves, I don't know, snapped their fingers or something like that, and he then is left to his own devices, and he gets up and he starts walking around. Who knows? So Halbrand goes and he meets Celebrimbor in his workshop, and he offers help to Celebrimbor. Help as to how to do the Mithril. And then we switch back to Numenor, because obviously things are still going there. You've got Pharazôn now trying to make his push for power. He's effectively saying the king's about to die, so we need to be prepared. There's something about the king's visage. I don't know whether they're simply wanting to make sure that there is a picture of him before he dies, so that they're able to put it up in some art museum or something like that, or whether it's about creating a sarcophagus for his body once he dies. And they want it to be lifelike, so therefore they need people to be taking drawings so they know what they need to create. Nothing is, as far as I could tell, nothing was really specified as to exactly what it's about, and if it was very clearly not well done, because it certainly bypassed me, and I was trying to work out what was going on all the way through that. And of course, at this point, Elendil's imaginary daughter has suddenly become so amazing that she's worthy to be one of the five apprentices picked for doing the job. So they have these five, and they each get a certain amount of time to be with the king. And of course, it's during her time with the king that Tar Palantir manages to wake up, and he tells her something really amazing. So obviously, she's going to be part of this really amazing bit later on when the doom of Numenor is revealed. She'll be saying, "Oh, this is going to happen. That's going to happen." So we have this moment, and she even gets to see the Palantir that's in the tower. She pulls the cloth off to have a look at it. So clearly she's being built up for a key role in future series. Then we switch back to Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor is now trying to make a push for creating. Initially, they're saying creating a crown, and it's going to be a crown which has the Mithril, and somehow this crown that would be worn by Gil-galad is going to help all the elves, despite the fact it has all this power. Putting it on the one person, I'm not sure I quite understand what's going on with that. And whilst he's doing this, he's talking about having power not of the flesh, but over flesh. And all of a sudden, for some reason, this one saying has Galadriel suddenly thinking, "Ooh, hang on. That doesn't sound good." And for some reason, because Halbrand has, I believe, been mentioned at some point before all this, she immediately thinks, "Oh, it's Halbrand that's done this. He's a baddie." Despite everything that's gone before, all of the things that we've seen with Galadriel and Halbrand, all the way through from the point at which they met on the raft, all the way through, he has built up enough trust in all of those settings that she shouldn't be batting an eyelid at this. It should be, well, okay, that's a bit strange, it's a bit of a coincidence, but it's just one of those things. But no, she immediately says, "Was Halbrand there? Did he say it?" To Celebrimbor. He says, "Well, no, it's my words." But still she doubts. And so finally she thinks, "Oh, maybe I should investigate this guy." So she gets a very camp-seeming elf. I mean, when I say camp, elves, generally speaking, are quite camp. This guy was a camp elf. So elves, standard camp. Camp elf, way beyond that. It was it was highly, highly amusing to see just how far they've gone, given everything that we think about elves, generally speaking, in this regard. So, so she's now concerned about Halbrand. Could he be doing something bad? Could he be evil? He said something that Adar has said, so therefore we need to be concerned. So that's where we leave it with Galadriel in Eregion, and we switch to the hobbits, the Harfoots, as they want to be called. We switch back to them. They've finally caught up with Gandalf. He's referred to as the Stranger, but no, he's Gandalf. We know because the way they're showing him. And they're looking and they're seeing the three weirdos with Gandalf. They've just tried to convince him of who he is. He's rejected it a bit, and so they've kind of knocked him out, and they're trying to restrain him. And so the Harfoots are looking on, and they go and look back, and they see that there are only two. Now, I wrote these lines down because this is utterly ridiculous. I can't remember who it was that said it, but one says, "Where'd the third one go?" And then the next, the response to that is, "Better two than three." Now, if you've already had an experience where these people have been able to vanish and then reappear as a jump scare right in your face, having been a fair distance away previously, if you've been in a situation where these characters have been able to set your carts on fire, though it's worth noting a little bit later on that the carts don't seem to be in that bad a nick, despite the fact that they were all burnt to a crisp by the three weirdos at the end of the last episode. If you've had these experiences with these particular people, saying better two than three when one has suddenly disappeared is possibly the dumbest thing you could say. Now, I know we've had a lot of dumb things being said in this series. I know that the Rings of Power writing team are as dumb as you could possibly come across. But seriously, when you've written these three characters to be really scary, and you've written these other characters to have experienced it previously, and then to see them again, and they say, better two than three, I'm sorry, that's about as asinine as you can get. So we have this better two than three, utterly idiotic, and then obviously the third one appears. I believe I'm not saying the third one was faking being Gandalf. They tricked them. They're about to get the Harfoots, and then we start to have a fight where Gandalf is involved, and it's effectively a repeat of what we see in the Fellowship of the Ring, where Saruman and Gandalf have their fight in Isengard. Member berries. Just here we go. We did this before in the. No, you didn't do it. Somebody else did it, and it was great and original then. But no, we're going to do exactly the same thing here. So we have the fight. Nori works out that the staff that the trans weirdo has been holding is it's a totem of power. It's a weapon of some kind. Whatever it is, it has power, and therefore she has to give it to Gandalf. How did she work this out? No idea. Not explained at all. She doesn't She doesn't kind of look and see something specifically being done with it. She doesn't have some kind of recognition from hearing something that's being said about it. She just assumes, oh, that's a stick, that'll help. Here, you've got to take it. When we can very clearly see these characters have power over all sorts of things. So simply giving Gandalf a stick, that's not going to mean a thing. But apparently, having the stick is this amazing thing that needs to happen for Gandalf to be able to fight back. So Gandalf is given the stick, or the staff of power, and all of a sudden, Gandalf has power over fire. Now, I need to look this one up because getting the right name is kind of important. Because, yeah, here we go. So, I believe I'm right in saying that part of the reason, if not the whole reason, Gandalf actually has power over fire is because he has Narya, the ring, one of the three rings that was initially it was given to Círdan, and then when Gandalf arrives in Middle Earth, Círdan gives him his ring. So he has the fire ring with the red stone. Nothing here about having the ring of power, the ring of fire. We'll get to timings of things in a minute on Gandalf, but he doesn't have this ring. Therefore, his ability with fire should not be quite, as far as I'm aware, it shouldn't be quite in the same way influenced. And he manages to get rid of all the fire that's been set up by the trans weirdo, and we have this rather ridiculous situation of all of a sudden he's there with power. He's got the staff, and he's able to deal with them. And they suddenly say, "Oh, he's not Sauron." The three weirdos say, "He's not Sauron." You have to wonder, I mean, if these people know who Sauron is, you'd think they might have actually worked with him previously, whether it was a case of they were working with him under Morgoth, or whether they've interacted with him at some other point in the past. You'd think they'd have a bit of an idea. Therefore, you'd think they'd actually have an idea of how to work out fairly quickly, through some kind of magical means, who Sauron is, assuming that this kind of thing happens to a Maiar, of losing their mind, losing their memories, and not knowing who they are. Of course, that second bit is completely ridiculous, doesn't fit in with what the Maiar are like, but yeah, I mean, in the setting of what they have done, where the theory is that Sauron hasn't been killed, but he has been in some way physically destroyed, so his body left, so his body was left, or the body that he had was left, and he created a new body to live in. His spirit is still there. These creatures, these weirdos, have clearly had some kind of interaction with Sauron previously, so you'd think they'd be able to actually work it all out. But no, it takes him suddenly regaining his memory by holding the staff to then be able to say, "Oh, he's not Sauron. He's not Sauron." And then they say, Istar. He is Istar. Apparently, this character is Istari. It's one of the Istari. Now, I said we'd come on to this. Complete Guide to Middle-earth. Gandalf. On his arrival in Middle-earth, around Third Age 1000, Círdan gave him Narya, one of the 3 rings. The bit says before this, as Gandalf the Grey, the second most powerful of the Order, Gandalf can be said to have been the person most responsible for the victory of the West and the downfall of Sauron in the Third Age. He laboured ceaselessly and ever faithfully for 2,000 years towards that goal, and by his foresight he built up many powers to oppose Sauron in the final struggle. Third Age, year 1000, Third Age, bearing in mind the Second Age goes on for 3,441 years, I think it is. Certainly it's 344 something. We're still that many years away from when Gandalf should be appearing. The Istari. Let's have a look at the Istari, shall we? So, Istari. 5 or more beings sent to Middle-earth by the Valar around the Third Age 1000 to unite and counsel the Free Peoples in their struggles against Sauron. Third Age 1000. And just for clarity, right at the end of the Istari it says, the origins of the Istari are veiled. Professor Tolkien said that they were Valar of a sort. If Olorin the Maiar can be equated with the name Olorin born by Gandalf in his youth in the West, then the Istari were Maiar, a conclusion made plausible by the equality of the power wielded by Gandalf and the Balrog of Moria. So Gandalf can't actually be Gandalf, even though he very clearly is. There's a couple of bits we will see in a minute which point to this. So we have the reveal. He, I believe, kills the 3 weirdos, and we see a scene where it makes it look like they are wraiths. If you remember the scene in Lord of the Rings where Frodo is stabbed when they're on the top of Weathertop, he puts the ring on and suddenly he can see the 3 ring wraiths as they truly are, and they're kind of white with gaunt faces and all that kind of stuff. And we see as Gandalf destroys them, we see them in that way. Ring wraiths. Ringwraiths. When did ringwraiths appear? Let's have a look, shall we? It's great having a book with all of this information. I mean, who knows how much we could end up creating from this. Just a shame that certain people didn't figure they'd have a look at some of this stuff. Okay. Well, it says look at the Nazgul. Should have looked there to begin with. Yes, I'm sorry on that one. Nazgul, 9 beings, slaves of the 9 rings, and the servants, the chief servants of Sauron. Originally men, 3 of them black Númenóreans, as in evil Númenóreans, king's men, nothing to do with the colour of their skin, to capital B, capital N. The Nazgul were each given one of the 9 rings by Sauron in the Second Age, and being desirous of power, were easily corrupted. About the Second Age 2250, they first appeared as the Nazgul. Oh, wrong one. We have Tale of the Years. When is it the Rings of Power are made? 1500. So between 1500 and 1590 is the time span for when the 9 rings are made for the men, as well as the 7 for the dwarf lords. And they'll be given out a little bit after that. because what happens is that they're made at Eregion, they're kept there, and then Sauron, when he comes and destroys Eregion, he then he takes the rings that he helped Celebrimbor create. So, drop my notes. So, what we have is creatures made to look like ring wraiths, at least 500 years earlier than they could have possibly actually received a ring to begin with. Being defeated by a character who shouldn't be on Middle-earth for at least 3,500 years. Well, so not at least, roughly 3,500 years. But we've got to do it because people like this kind of thing. It's all about bringing back the remembrances of all the things they enjoyed in the film. Oh, good grief. The lack of originality for the sake of trying to make people feel good about this is utterly, utterly insane. Why on earth do they do it? Well, actually, we know why they do it. They do it because they have absolutely no concept of how to write anything original, and also no idea of how to write something that fits within a lore that's already created. They're quite happy to pluck little bits here and there all over the place and say, right, we'll stick that all together in a nice little patchwork, and you won't even notice the fact that it's completely out of sequence. And then after Gandalf has defeated the three weirdos, they disappear as butterflies or something like that. And the three girls, it was Nori, her mum, and her best friend, was it Poppy? I forget. Those three, along with Lenny Henry, have all gone, and they completely forget the fact that earlier on, Lenny Henry, whatever his character's name, he's been stabbed. He had a knife thrown at him, and it hit him right in the chest. But no, the girls completely forgetting that. They had this big girly hug, and then they noticed that Lenny Henry's had to sit down and he's holding his chest because he's been stabbed. And all of a sudden it's, oh, are you all right? All for the sake of having this big girly power moment of, yeah, we did it. The only thing that happened that they could possibly be said to have been involved in really was being slight distractions and Nori giving Gandalf the staff. Beyond that, good grief. And then another stupid bit. Lenny Henry. He knows he's going to die. He wants to see a final sunrise. Okay, fair enough. He dies while watching the sunrise. He dies sitting upright, not resting against anything. You know what happens when your body dies? Your body stops being able to hold yourself up. But no, Lenny Henry's just, yeah, I'm dead. Doesn't slump over onto one of them. Doesn't kind of fall backwards for comedic effect or anything like that. He simply dies upright with nothing propping him up. But at least his character's over, because his character was absolutely awful. It really was. I mean, let's face it, all of the Harfoots are utterly awful. But we're still going to have to deal with at least one in the next series. Okay, we're now back to the ship with the returning Queen and her surprisingly well-survived army, given that there was this massive explosion from a volcano. But anyway, Elendil no longer angry, it seems. He's moved past his anger towards Galadriel as being the reason for his son's death. No longer really wanting to say, I wish I'd left her in the sea rather than bringing her to Numenor. No reason why. We're not told that he's actually had some kind of process. We're not shown any kind of process. There's nothing that gives us any reason to see why he's changed his mind. He just is, you know. He has a chat with the Queen. He reveals that he really is an elf friend. That the whole thing with what his name meant earlier on in the series, it's not surprising to anyone who knows, because if you know what Elendil means, you know what Elendil means. And for those that didn't know, well, why do they care? There's no biggie there on this whole name thing. But yeah, and there seems to be some kind of growing relationship. I'm assuming it's of a friendly variety between him and Miriel. And we have, I can't remember whether it's here or whether it happens a little bit later, but we have them arriving back in Numenor, and the king, it's clear the king has died because there's black flags all over the place. But that's as far as we get. Tar Palantir is dead, therefore Queen Regent Miriel is now queen, and she's blind. And we know that Pharazôn is really evil and wants power, so therefore he's clearly going to go to take the throne. So that's clearly the main kind of political intrigue for the next season. Anyway, Galadriel, she comes in to see what's going on in Celebrimbor's workshop. There's just been a big explosion in the tower where his workshop is, and I can't remember what she says, apart from the fact that she said the word "we." She has had nothing to do with it at all, and she declares "we" as though she's been a part of the process that's going on. She has nothing to do with ring forging. She has nothing to do with any of this process at all. And clearly, there's a massive issue when it comes to the way that the series has been financed for members of cast, because there's hardly any elves around in any of the shots that we're seeing. Back at that point, the Noldor was still very numerous in Middle-earth. Eregion was quite a bustling city. And yet, I think I'm right in saying you're probably only just hitting double figures with the number of different elves that we see throughout this entire episode. And then she, after she's joined in this "we" thing and gives supposedly gives Halbrand the another kind of clue as to what they could possibly be doing to improve things, and we find out as well that they're going to be making more than just one. They're going to be making two. Oh wait, no, that's a little bit later we find out, but this is part of the whole kind of inspiration thing. But anyway, she goes off, she finds out about Halbrand's not being the king of the Southlands. So she goes out, and he then follows out after her, and she declares to him, "Look, you're not." And she hears, she says to him, "Who are you? You know who I am. We've been through all this before." And they have a back and forth, and eventually she says, "Tell me," something like, "Tell me your name." And we have the line from Sauron, because that's who Halbrand is. He says, "I've been alive since before the first. Was it the first song, the first music, or the first light, or whatever it was? I've been around for this long, and in that time, I've had many names." Okay, we now know it's Sauron. And then we have, all of a sudden, she tries to stab him with her brother's knife, and he stops her, and there's some kind of mental magic engagement. Maybe it's a case he goes into her mind or something like that. Whatever it is. We have various different settings. So the first setting we have is she's in Valinor, and her brother is speaking to her, and she says, "My brother died," and she declares, "He died with countless others." Now, shall we go back to our regular one, the Complete Guide to Middle-earth? Let's have a look at Finrod, because he had a very specific death. Finrod. Let's see. So Finrod was the first of the Eldar to encounter the Edain, whom he instructed in Osiriand. He fought in the wars of Beleriand. During Dagor Bragollach, he was surrounded by orcs in the Fen of Serek, but was rescued by Barahir, whom he gave his ring to. And when Beren, descendant of Barahir, came to Nargothrond for that aid, Finrod gallantly went forth to his doom in the quest of the Silmaril. Overcome by Sauron in a duel of songs of power, Finrod was imprisoned with Beren in what had been his own dungeons in Minas Tirith, not the Minas Tirith that we know from Lord of the Rings, but it's why Minas Tirith got its name. Finrod was slain by a wolf defending Beren and was buried on Tol Sirion. Finrod died alone. He died to save someone, but he died alone. He didn't die with countless others. So the way this is framed is utterly ridiculous. It's framed effectively as though the way that we have the remembrance right at the beginning of this series, where the first thing is this part of it is Finrod is surrounded by orcs, and he's kind of trying to point over them with his sword, trying to attack, whatever it is. And then we have, a little bit later, Galadriel is picking up helmets and putting them in a pile. It's as though they're suggesting he died in one of the main battles. No, he didn't. He died protecting Beren, which is kind of important when you think about what eventually happens to Beren's descendants with the eventual salvation of elves and men in Middle-earth. Okay, so we have this Finrod bit. We then have a switch. So there's a lot of switches going on at this point. We switch from being in Valinor to being back on the raft, and Sauron says, "Look at me." They start talking. He's basically saying, "I'll make you my queen," and he quotes. His lines include saying, he would make her a queen, fair as the sea, stronger than the foundations of the earth. Now, you might be wondering, hang on, I think I recognise this. Well, funnily enough, this is a line straight out of Lord of the Rings. It's one that's in the film. It's one that's also in the book. It's the point at which Frodo offers Galadriel the ring, and she says, "And now at last it comes. You will give me the ring freely. In place of the Dark Lord you will set up a queen, and I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair." They cannot write their own script, their own dialogue, so they have to rip it off. And the way that they rip it off, they're effectively saying the whole reason why Galadriel uses those words later on is because Sauron has used them here in their completely made-up storyline that never happened, about some kind of romantic attachment that Sauron has for Galadriel. The storyline that never happened, they're using to say, look, Galadriel says stuff because she had it said to her first. And so she's eventually she rejects Sauron, and Sauron leaves her, and it's almost like she's drowning, but she gets saved by Elrond, who finds her in the water that she and Sauron were standing by before all this mind game stuff. And she goes back into the into the workshop with Elrond and speaks to Celebrimbor and declares Halbrand is persona non grata. He should not be allowed back in, despite the fact that he's the one that inspires and works with Celebrimbor for the 16 other rings that have yet to be made. And she's the one that then says, don't make 2 crowns, make 3 items, and that's where we have the rings. And we've had an earlier callback when Halbrand was first looking around, of seeing the 3 different coloured stones, the red, the blue and the white. And wouldn't you know it, as well as Galadriel being the one that that calls for the 3 rings to be made, she's also the one that helps to create them by giving her brother's dagger, which is Valinor gold and silver. The purest of gold, the purest of silver, it's melted down and made into the ring. So without Galadriel, the whole of Middle-earth is doomed, because she makes the rings, because she says, let's make rings, or let's make 3, not 2, and she's the one that provides the materials to merge with the Mithril. Could you be any more glaringly obvious about how much you want to push Galadriel as being this amazing character who does absolutely everything, and she's the one that does everything that makes Middle-earth saved in the end? I mean, my guess is that they would probably completely rewrite things in The Lord of the Rings if they were allowed to say that it's actually Galadriel will take the ring from Frodo but not wear it. She will go all the way to Mount Doom and she'll throw it in, and the books would be over after kind of halfway through the 2 Towers. Nothing to do with anything else, because she's just so amazing and strong and brave. Good grief. Then we have a return to the Harfoots. The wife of Lenny Henry's character, she's rattling through things because she's clearly now in charge, and we now have a matriarchy of control, and she's running through all the things that have to go on, and she rattles off the line of nobody goes off track and nobody's left behind, or whatever it is. They're utterly meaningless line. And bear in mind that this is the line where they're saying, we don't leave people behind. And she's the one that wanted to take absolutely everything away from the Brandyfoot family when their dad had a bad ankle. She was the one that effectively was saying, let's kill them by taking all of their stuff so they can't survive. And she's now saying to everyone else, we don't leave anyone behind, do we? These guys have a memory short enough flipping goldfish. And then we also find out that Nori is so besotted with Gandalf that she's going to go with him. Despite the fact that hobbits, which Harfoots are, hobbits do not come into the historical reckonings until, what was it? Is it 1600? Let's double check on this. I think I'm right in saying it's 1600, is it? No, sorry, tell a lie. It's in around the Third Age, 1050. The hobbits, who had become divided into their three distinct groups of Fallowhides, Halfhides, and Harfoots and Stores, fled westward because of the evil in Mirkwood. And the Shire was established in 1600. So they came into the reckoning of history. Let's see. Again, about roughly about 3,500 years after we've got a Harfoot going off into the east with a Gandalf. Nori going with Gandalf into the east. And when she eventually gets to the decision for where to go, well, she finally gets to being with Gandalf, and she says, "Right, let's go." He says to her, "Well, you can lead the way," and she says, "I haven't got a clue where to go." So Gandalf says, "Okay, we'll go that way," and she says, "How do you know?" And he says something like, "It's there's a sweetness on the breeze," or something like that. And then we have, "When in doubt, always follow your nose." Remember that line? Mary says, "Oh, he's remembered." "No, but the air's a lot less fouler down there," says Gandalf, "in Moria, where he says, 'When in doubt, Meriadoc, always follow your nose.'" As far as I can tell, I've looked through the whole kind of bit within Moria in the Lord of the Rings book. I can't find that anywhere. So this is simply regurgitating a line from the film. The writers, I mean, I've seen someone suggest that the only way that you could really possibly get any good out of the Rings of Power is if Jeff Bezos were to basically say, right, everyone involved in the writing, everyone involved in, well, I would say, yeah, basically the entire cast, crew, well, maybe not the crew, but certainly the writing staff and the cast, get rid of them all, sack them all, and then restart from there. And the only way you could possibly fix things is there. But whoever's in there, they need to be able to write something that, whilst it feels Tolkienian, whilst it feels a part of the world of Middle Earth, it's not simply regurgitating kind of supposed favourite lines from the film or indeed from the book. This needs to be original stuff that they create that is in keeping with the world that they are writing in. If you don't want to keep with a lore and a mythos that's already been created, don't write within it. But they do, because they're utterly worthless people in Hollywood. They have absolutely no value in terms of the roles they have. They've no ability to create anything that's worth watching. But as I say, I will carry on watching. I will carry on calling it out, because it needs to be done. And there's an element to which it's actually cathartic to actually be able to join in with this insane cultural stuff that's going on. To say, yeah, actually, I can pick this up too. I can show I can show key bits that are clearly wrong. Because as I keep on saying, it needs to be called out. If we don't call it out, we just let it happen. We leave them to it, and they've won another IP, which isn't good. So that was episode 8 of Rings of Power. If you're wanting something fun to watch, this isn't it. If you're wanting something that is vaguely intelligent to watch, this isn't it. If you're wanting something that's connected to Tolkien and will make you feel like you're actually engaging with something that connects in the same way as books or films that you've watched previously, this isn't it. If you're looking for something that you want to rant against because of how much they've butchered the source material that they're working from, this is definitely it. I can't say anything more than that. This, I think I'm right in saying I changed my star rating of it to a half star. I think it just about keeps the half star purely on the basis of some of the visuals are reasonable. But beyond that, there is nothing that gets any kind of positivity that I can tell. It's just utterly wasting people's time in the creation of this, because unlike Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, 20-30 years time, when people look back on this, they won't look back on this fondly. They won't look back and say, wow, that was really well done. Yes, Jackson didn't stick to the lore completely within Lord of the Rings, but he was within the spirit of it. He was within the general feel of it in terms of the scripts that were created, and it was faithful to the feel of Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings, even though there were some bits that were changed and some bits which were just completely missed out, that I know most fans would say they wish it had been kept in. This is just... I mean, words do not exist without offending parents that can describe how bad this is. So that's the end of this series, and apparently it's going to be another couple of years, maybe 2.5 years before we get the next one. I shall be doing that, probably, unless the financial situation in the world crashes so badly that I can't afford to have Amazon Prime anymore. I will do one more video, though. I'll aim to do it in this coming week, because, as I said last time, I want to look at part of the reason why it's actually rather important to be keeping to the lore that Tolkien created for the Second Age. There's actually some fairly key themes that he sticks to with his writing of it that are theologically based. So I'll aim to do that this week. So there will be one more Rings of Power video before the hiatus, as they wait between this season and the next one. But yeah, if you've watched and enjoyed, great. I don't think I'll be doing any more videos like this after the lore one on any of these things, simply because I don't see them, or I don't have the requisite kind of background knowledge to be able to speak to them like this. Though if you like videos which just show pictures of nice walks in the hills, then that's one thing that I do try and do every week, of a walk in the hills, and put videos up with the photos that I've taken. So if you like something like that, you might want to have a look around the other videos I've got. But otherwise, hopefully, those that are watching, I'll see you in the next video that I do next week. But otherwise, I'll catch you in, 2.5 years.